Today we're jumping into a really pivotal era, the one that basically built modern America, the age of industry. Between 1870 and 1900, the entire country was just completely remade by new technology, huge corporations, and a totally new way of life.
So, how did a war over electricity and the world's very first billion-dollar company set the stage for the America we know today? Well, this explainer is going to give you all the key facts you need to answer that, and ace your exams. We'll get into the inventions, the titans of business, and all the tensions that define this incredible time.
We're going to tackle this whole transformation in four main parts. First, the inventions that kicked it all off. Then, the businessmen who built empires. The workers who really paid the price. And finally, the birth of the American consumer.
Okay, let's dive right in with the absolute explosion of new ideas that sparked this whole era. And we're not just talking about a few new gadgets here. This was like a fundamental rewiring of the entire country.
I mean, the sheer number of new inventions was just staggering. The U.S. Patent Office was completely flooded. To put that number in perspective, it's more than 7 times the patents issued in the entire 70 years before that. This wave of innovation really did change everything.
So what was the key driver of all this change? Steel. Before this, steel was super expensive and really hard to make. But the Bessemer process changed everything. It made it possible to produce strong, cheap steel in massive amounts. This stuff literally built the new America, from railroads to the very first skyscrapers. Communication also took a giant leap forward. When Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone in 1876, it felt like the country shrank overnight. I mean, look at this. In just a couple of decades, it went from being this scientific curiosity to a network of over 1 million phones. It totally changed business and personal life forever.
But you know, the most critical battle of all was over electric power. They called it the War of the Currents, and it pitted two giants against each other. On one side, you had Thomas Edison pushing direct current, or DC. The problem was, it could only send power about 2 miles. On the other side was George Westinghouse, who backed alternating current, or AC, which could go way, way farther.
So, here's the crucial takeaway. Westinghouse's AC power was the real key to electrifying the whole country. It meant factories and homes didn't have to be huddled right next to a power station anymore. This one innovation basically unlocked widespread industrialization. Okay, so let's see how all these amazing inventions were used to build just unimaginable fortunes. A whole new class of businessmen popped up, guys who used this technology to create corporate empires on a scale nobody had ever seen before. Take Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate. He was a classic rags-to-riches story, and he argued that the rich had a moral duty to use their money for the public good. He wrote about it in his famous essay, The Gospel of Wealth, saying that philanthropy wasn't just charity, it was a basic responsibility of being successful.
Now, John D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon, he had let's say, a different approach: total control. He perfected a strategy called vertical integration. As you can see, his company, Standard Oil, didn't just sell oil. It owned the wells, the pipelines, the factories, every single step from the ground to the customer.
But his other strategy, horizontal integration, was even more ruthless. The goal here was simple: wipe out all the competition. Standard Oil would just slash its prices, drive its rivals out of business, and then buy up their bankrupt companies for next to nothing. Pretty soon, they were the only ones left. So, quick question. Was this stuff legal? And the answer is no. This practice created monopolies, which flew in the face of state and federal laws. Rockefeller's methods were super effective, but they also got him a ton of criticism and legal trouble. And this kind of ruthless approach is exactly what earned guys like Rockefeller and the railroad magnate Jay Gould the not-so-flattering title of robber barons. The name basically implied that they got rich by exploiting people and bending the rules, not through fair competition. But the ultimate consolidation, the biggest move of all, came from a financier, J.P. Morgan. He wasn't a steel guy or an oil guy. He was a banker who just bought and merged other companies. And in 1901, he bought out Carnegie Steel and a bunch of others to create U.S. Steel, the world's very first billion-dollar corporation.
$1 billion, that's an incredible amount of wealth. But all of this massive growth came at a really steep price. And that price was paid not by the titans of industry, but by the millions of men, women, and children working in their factories and mines.
Just look at these numbers. For the average worker back then, reality was grim. Wages were incredibly low. often not even enough to live on. The work week was 60 hours long, and the conditions, they were just shockingly dangerous. Think about it. 25,000 people died on the job every single year.
So what happened? Well, workers started to organize and fight back, but their efforts were often met with just overwhelming force. This timeline shows a series of huge and often violent clashes between labor, the company owners, and even the government itself.
A huge turning point was the Haymarket affair in Chicago in 1886. During a labor protest, somebody threw a bomb at the police. They never found out who did it, but the event was blamed on labor organizers anyway. It completely turned public opinion against the unions and just crippled one of the biggest unions at the time, the Knights of Labor.
And this brings us to the two different playbooks for organizing labor. On one hand, you had the Knights of Labor. They had this big vision of one big union for everybody, skilled, unskilled, everyone, and they fought for big social changes. On the other hand, the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, was way more practical. It only organized skilled workers and focused on specific goals like better pay.
Now, remember this for your exams. Across all these different unions, there was one central demand that united them all: the 8-hour workday. That fight for 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will became a powerful rallying cry for the whole movement.
Okay, last section. Let's look at how this industrial engine changed everyday life in one more huge way, by creating the modern American shopper. You see, the same factories where people were working these long hours were also churning out an incredible amount of new stuff to buy.
For the very first time, a huge variety of affordable goods became available to pretty much everyone. Giant department stores popped up in cities. Mail-order catalogs from companies like Sears meant families in the middle of nowhere could buy anything from a bike to an entire house. And it was all fueled by professional advertising and, crucially, the new ability to buy things on credit.
All right, time for a final review. Here are the must-know facts. AC power made widespread electricity possible. Horizontal integration was Rockefeller's way of creating a monopoly. The gospel of wealth was Carnegie's idea about philanthropy. Remember the difference between the big-picture Knights of Labor and the more focused AFL. The Haymarket affair was a huge setback for unions whose main goal was the 8-hour day. And finally, modern consumer culture was born from catalogs, ads, and credit. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. Do the benefits of all this new industrial power outweigh its immense human cost?